We have Professor Benedict from the University of Musuma in Tanzania. We have Professor Marco from Cambridge. We have Professor Perez from the University of Harvard in USA. We have Professor Parura from the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. We have Professor Brand from the University of Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya. We then have Professor Bernardina from the University of Stanford. We have Professor Priska from the University of Dodoma. We have a UN representative, Professor Sarafina. Together with us, we have Professor and Bishop Iran Salumbo from Vatican City, and this is accompanied with Professor Justina. Dear professors and diplomatics, today's topic is based on the conflicts in the Middle East. May I call upon Professor Oprah to tell us what Middle East is? Welcome.
Thank you, Professor Ramsey, for this opportunity. The Middle East is located in Southwest Asia and to the east of the Mediterranean Sea. It includes Turkey in the north coast and Egypt in the south coast of the sea. The Middle East is made up of 17 countries. Some of them are Lebanon, Arabia, Yemen, Syria, Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and so on. In the early 10th century, the term Near East used to differentiate the western part of Asia as being the area closer to Europe as opposed to the Far East. This was changed into Middle East. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Oprah, for your good explanation. Yes, Professor Benedict, currently we have been observing the war between Israel and the Middle East countries. Will you tell us the source of this war?
The 7th of October last year, when Hamas fighters launched an unprecedented invasion across the Israel southern border with Gaza, storming Israel towns and killing Israel soldiers. 1,000 of rockets were fired and about 1,200 civilians died and 251 were taken as hostages. The attack made the most civilian deaths in a single day in the country's entire history. It is said that nothing like this has happened in the modern history of the Israel-Palestinian conflict. That's why an outright war between Israel and Hamas began. Currently, the war has extended up to Iran because on Wednesday of the 31st of July this year, Ismail Hamideh, who was the top leader of Hamas, was assassinated in Iran's capital when he was for the presidential inauguration. This death increased the conflict in the Middle East, and Iran is preparing for a strong revenge against Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Benedict. Professor Marco, what effects did the countries engaged in this war face?
Actually, the start of severe conflict in countries in these regions lose about 2% in real GDP per capita compared before the conflict. Economic across Middle East and Central Asia are more affected by conflict, and the idea that the violent conflict reduces economic output is uncontroversial. However, the repercussions are not as harsher and longer lasting in these regions than most others. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Marco, for your good evaluation. Over to you, Professor Perez. How are other countries affected by this war?
Thank you, Professor Ramsey. The war is also terrible in many other ways. They make people's lives insecure, lower their living standards, destroy the environment. And if fought between countries arrived with nuclear weapons, can be existential threat to humanity. Dear professors, for instance, oil production amounted roughly to 30.7 million barrels per day in 2022, accounting 31.3% of the global total. Yet, as a crucial global factor in global energy, financial markets, and trade. Dear professors, in the Middle East, conflict has escalating to extensive implications, not only for the region, but also for the global economy. Another thing which I want to add more is that apart from Middle East war, we expect to have the Third World War. This is because some nations are still preparing nuclear weapons for the preparation of the Third World War, like Russia, Ukraine, North Korea, and USA. Thanks.
You're right, Professor Perez. The country is affected in general. Now let me give this chance to Professor Parula to tell us how Africa is affected.
Thank you, Professor. Dear Professor, the crisis is already direct and indirect affecting African economic, diplomatic, peace and security landscape in many ways. The expression of sort of a season of some African countries has added to an already tense of relationship between the Quds forces and protesters. Africa becomes second in the number of armed conflicts per region, with more than 35 non-regional conflicts taking place in Burkina Faso, Mali, Mozambique, Nigeria, Sudan, and South Sudan. Furthermore, trade disruption, oil and gas price, and rising of important costs has been reported. For example, Egypt's economy, which relies on tourism, remittances, and revenues from the Suez Canal, has been hit by the war. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Parula. Now, Professor Brian, according to Professor Parula's explanations, what is the role of the EU in this?
Thank you, Professor Lance, for your question. First of all, we must know that the Israel Together War offers Africa an opportunity to extend its agents and relevance in multilateral spaces now. The conflict is complicating relations among African countries, African Union and Israel, and between the major allies of Africa and Israel. As it was in Russia and Ukraine war, the conflict was depending on the EU's division between support for human rights in Israel and to self-defense for human rights in Palestine. So, the EU's challenge lies in balancing its long-standing support for Palestine in deepening relations as Israel with many member states before the critical onset of October 2023. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Brian, for your brief explanation. Professor Bernardina, you as an expert of economy, how is the global economy affected by this one?
Actually, global economy can be affected by geopolitical events, both directly and indirect through financial trade and commodity price channels. In financial markets, this happens both through direct financial section and indirect high-risk premium. On trade side, increased restrictions can cause disrupt trade and supply chain problems. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Bernardino. May I welcome the UN representative to tell us the role of UN in this war?
The United Nations cooperates with regional and international parties in efforts to encourage improvement on the ground and advise the political negotiation toward a two-state solution to the Israel and Palestine conflict, as well as comprehensive and just lasting peace in Middle East. For example, the Human Rights Council has addressed to Palestine during regular and special sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sarafin. Professor and Bishop Wahila and Salumbo, do you think this phenomenon can be a sign that Jesus Christ is coming to condemn the world for the second time?
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to clarify this phenomenon. On my side and view, these are the critical signs for Jesus to come in order to judge the world. And if you recall from the Bible, Jesus is telling his disciples that there will be famine, earthquakes, terrible diseases, floods, and people will engage in bad manners, and all witnesses such as homosexuality, digestion, and highlight at the end day. Let us read the word in the Bible in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 3 to 8. The discourse came into him privately, saying, "Tell us, when shall these things be, and what should be the signs of the coming and the end of the world?" And Jesus answered and said unto them, "Take heed that no man deceives you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear the words of rumors of war. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famine, pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows."
Professor Justina, any condition in this?
To conclude, as the scripture described from the Holy Bible, it tells us the reality that this is the end of the age. So, as a human, it is a good time for everyone to make preparation for your life. My dear professors, this is the ending time. You have to make preparation or aim your life by abstaining from doing evil deeds which are not pleasing God, such as witchcraft, drunkenness, and immorality. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Justina, for your good explanation. Professor Priest, what do you think should be the conflict resolution for this war?
On my side, I think there should be a diplomatic negotiation between Israel and these nations for peacemaking and conflict resolution. In the Middle East discussion of simulations and for the field of the diplomats and participants of prospects for the field of overall Middle East peace negotiations. So, the argument between two sides should be done so as to live peacefully and resolve the basic incompatibilities and hence cause to use arms against one another. Thank you.
Thank you all professors for participating in this discussion, and I ask you to keep on insisting your bishops and regional leaders to conduct the prayers so as to avoid the war from extending. Thank you.
Nafasi hii kumkaribisha sasa kwa niaba ya wazazi shule pia ilimteua Mr. Mpoto, huyu ni